A man suspected of shooting and killing 2 Swedish nationals in Brussels on Monday has been shot dead by police and a weapon recovered.
U.S. President Joe Biden is heading to Israel in a show of support and to try to prevent the war from becoming a wider conflict within the Middle East. The EU is launching a humanitarian air bridge to get aid into Gaza as supplies of water, food, and medicine run out.
Police in Belgium say they have shot dead a man suspected of killing 2 Swedish nationals and injuring a 3rd person in Brussels on Monday. The alleged assailant was reportedly shot in a cafe in the capital on Tuesday morning and has been identified as Abdesalem El. The weapon believed to have been used in the attack has also been recovered. This after police launched a manhunt to track down the suspect, and reports that the alleged gunman uploaded a video on social media in which he said he was inspired by the Islamic State group.
Au cours de la soirée, une revendication a effectivement été posée sur les réseaux sociaux et enregistrée par une personne se présentant comme l'assaillant. Celle-ci se dit inspirée par l'État islamique. Au cours de cette même revendication, la nationalité suédoise des victimes est évoquée comme motivation probable de l'acte. À ce stade, aucun élément n'indique un lien potentiel avec la situation israélo-palestinienne.
The Swedish national team was scheduled to play an away game with Belgium that evening. But once media outlets reported that the 2 people killed were wearing football shirts belonging to the Swedish national team, Swedish footballers asked UEFA to halt the match.
Rockets fired from Gaza intercepted by Israel's Iron Dome air defense system. This, as Israel pursued its siege overnight, killing at least 70 people in the southern part of the enclave. U.S. President Joe Biden is expected to visit Israel on Wednesday to show support amid concerns the war could become a larger regional conflict.
On Wednesday, President Biden will visit Israel. President Biden will underscore our crystal clear message to any actor, state or non-state, trying to take advantage of this crisis to attack Israel. Don't.
The Rafah crossing from Egypt into Gaza was one area hit by an overnight airstrike. The crossing is a focal point for aid agencies trying to get supplies into the Palestinian territory, as it is the only entry point into Gaza not controlled by Israel. Meanwhile, the Hamas militant group has released its first video of a hostage. A young woman speaking Hebrew identified herself as 21-year-old Maya Sham. Her family gave permission for stills of the footage to be released. Israel says at least 199 people were forcibly taken into Gaza, but Hamas says the figure is higher, 250. 1 million people have so far been displaced in the Gaza Strip. Israel's military says it is trying to move civilians for their safety ahead of a major campaign in Gaza's north aimed at wiping out Hamas. But early on Wednesday, Palestinians in Gaza reported intense bombardments in the southern part of the enclave, where they were told to relocate. Crowds of Palestinian dual nationals still waiting at the closed Rafah crossing, trying to flee from Gaza to Egypt. This after reports of Israeli bombardment on the nearby town of Khan Yunis and Rafah, where Israel ordered civilians to seek refuge. The attacks close to the crossing is one of the reasons why it's still closed, keeping critical aid on the Egyptian side. But the EU is trying to change that.
The Commission has announced to triple humanitarian aid for civilians in Gaza to 75 million euros. And we are launching an EU humanitarian air bridge to Gaza through Egypt. The first 2 flights will start this week.
German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has also confirmed he will travel to Israel and Egypt this week to help get humanitarian assistance through and to prevent Iran from entering the conflict.
Beantwortet im Hinblick auf den späteren Besuch in Ägypten. Es geht eben darum, konstant mit allen im Gespräch zu sein und eine Perspektive zu entwickeln, die solche Eskalation verhindert. Im Übrigen geht es natürlich auch immer um die Frage, wie humanitäre Hilfe organisiert werden kann.
In New York, the UN Security Council temporarily suspended a session on 2 competing resolutions on the situation in Gaza and Israel. There's contention over different texts. Russia calls for a humanitarian ceasefire, while Brazil calls for humanitarian pauses to allow aid access to the besieged Gaza Strip.
Bunches of flowers and candles. The northern city of Arras in France has held a vigil for the school teacher who was stabbed to death by a former student last week. The victim was 57-year-old Dominique Bernard. 3 other adults were also injured, one of whom is in critical condition. The suspect is a radicalized extremist of Chechenian origin, and the government is calling the incident an Islamic terror attack. The homage on Monday also paid tribute to teacher Samuel Paty, beheaded exactly 3 years ago by Islamic extremists.
Rome is holding a series of special events to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the deportation of more than 1,000 of the city's Jews to the Nazi extermination camp of Auschwitz. The message is, quote, "We remember the past because we care about the future." The raid occurred in the ghetto district at dawn on the 16th of October 1943, and 2 days later, 1,022 Roman Jews, including 200 children, were sent to Auschwitz on a sealed train. Only 16 would make it back to Rome alive.
Tirana rolls out the red carpet for European leaders at a summit aimed at boosting cooperation and paving the way for the integration of the Western Balkans. The meeting, which is part of the so-called Berlin process, is taking place against the backdrop of serious regional tensions. Some expect little or no progress, despite official optimism.
We want to give access to the European single market, access to Western Balkan companies to the European single market. But for that, we need reforms in the Western Balkans. And those who are willing to reform, those who are willing to complete their common regional market, get funding for investment from the European Union.
European leaders will once again put pressure on the representatives of Serbia and Kosovo to normalise their relations under the auspices of the EU. A speech that some seem tired of hearing. The president of Serbia, Alexander Vučić, preferred to go to China to sign a trade agreement.
The avant-garde in Georgia at Bazaar is one of the main highlights of this autumn's EurParia Arts Festival in Brussels. The exhibition centres on the first 3 decades of the 20th century, when the art scene flourished in the South Caucasus country. It's a period that includes a 3-year interlude of independence between the fall of the Russian Empire and the invasion of the Soviet regime.
It was very important for Georgian avant-garde not only to study and to build the institutions to research art, but also to use it as a method in their very avant-garde practices. So it makes the Georgian avant-garde also very exceptional with this connection between the past and the future and the tradition also.
The mixture of Eastern and Western elements is also evident, with various styles present in the work. Euronews spoke with Levan Chogosvili, a Georgian artist whose work features heavily in the exhibition.
This exhibition is also very good because it shows that our art was very close with European art and so on. Today, many Georgian artists, young artists, of course, they always try to go somewhere in the West and study there and then return.
Visitors can also enjoy a programme of concerts, cinema, dance and theatre at various cultural venues in Belgium until mid-January 2024. Polyphony, meaning multiple voices, is just one of the core themes of the festival, both in music and as an opportunity for diverse communities to express their views. The second theme is remembrance.
Remembrance is about questioning the past and also to reflect about the future. How do you deal with certain past? How you deal with the Soviet regime, which still has an impact today. So it's about also about conflicts from the past, also more recent conflicts, like conflicts still going on today in Georgia, in South Ossetia, and in Abkhazia, and also, of course, the Ukrainian war, which has an impact in Georgia.
An important part of the programme is the outcome of creative partnerships between Georgians and artists of other nationalities, with the commissioning of specific works for the festival.
Russian President Vladimir Putin arriving in Beijing, on a visit expected to cement China's support for Moscow as it becomes increasingly isolated on the world stage due to its war in Ukraine. The Russian leader will meet with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping for an event meant to celebrate China's signature Belt and Road Initiative. Putin will be among the highest-profile guests at the gathering, set to mark the 10th anniversary of the trillion-dollar project. The controversial effort is meant to expand Beijing's influence by funding major infrastructure projects and trade routes across much of the world. Walt Disney Studios has released a new trailer to celebrate 100 years of cinema. Once Upon a Studio features 543 Disney characters from more than 85 feature-length and short films, celebrating 10 decades of storytelling. It's also releasing 10 classic animated films in cinemas across the world for a limited time. However, numerous actors celebrated in their own way by going on strike in front of Disney headquarters in Los Angeles.